May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Jesus knew. He knew that this supper would be his last. He didn't have much time left, just hours really, and he wanted to be clear about what his final words would be to his disciples. What could he say that would leave the biggest impression on them? What would you say to your loved ones if you knew that you only had very little time left? Jesus chose to speak to them about love. He gave them a commandment: love one another just as I have loved you. Maundy, if you didn't already know, comes from a Latin word that means commandment, thus Maundy Thursday. Now, Jesus could have said a number of other things, but he chose these simple yet profound words: love one another just as I have loved you. I imagine that most of us would also spend our final breath using words about love to assure those left behind how much they have meant to us. But exactly how did Jesus show this love for his disciples? We know, we were just told in the gospel, that he loved them until the end, even Judas. We too are commanded to be faithful in our love for each other. Jesus needed this community of disciples to be crystal clear about this, because he would no longer be with them in person to lead them. Maundy Thursday is a perfect time to remember how we too must love one another as Jesus loved us. Take this community, for example. We show our love for each other in Jesus' name every time we break bread together. We offer a sign of peace to each other first, to ready us for this sacrificial act of love. And like Jesus, we remember that we are asked to love everyone, even those who have hurt us deeply, as often happens in a community like a church. A common phrase used in the opening of Al-Anon, the 12-step group for families and friends of alcoholics, is this: though you may not like all of us, you will come to love us in a very special way, the same way we already love you. Now, you probably don't like each person in this community in the same way, but we are urged to love despite that person's faults, and to respect the dignity of every human being, as it says in our baptismal vows. Another way Jesus modeled love at the Last Supper was to humble himself before his disciples by engaging in the act of washing their feet, a task that's usually reserved for servants, not somebody like Jesus, who is the Son of God. In many churches tonight, people are washing each other's feet, bowing down in humility, and imitating this kind of servant love that Jesus always modeled. To love is to be willing to go to extremes to care for each other, even washing filthy, smelly feet. Jesus teaches us that it is not beneath anyone to serve others. At the same time, however, we must remember that love is a two-way street. To receive love, we must be willing to be vulnerable. Remember Sunday's readings where Jesus allowed Mary to put expensive perfume on his feet? He was the receiver of love in that case. Oftentimes, it's harder for people to receive than to give. We get that servanthood part of being a Christian, but we have trouble ourselves being vulnerable and accepting love at times when we need it most. I experienced this kind of servanthood love when I was in a vulnerable position many years ago in Haiti. I call it my Maundy Thursday moment. I had traveled to Haiti with others from my former parish, St. Paul's in Dedham. We had a relationship with a community there in a beautiful spot in a plateau with views of mountains all around us. To give more context, this little village of Wampa was economically, as you might imagine, a very poor community. Most people lived in what we would call huts, made of wood and thatched roofs made of palm leaves. The luckier ones had cement walls and tin roofs. The focus of our mission over the years was to construct and then support a medical clinic, the first in the community. Anyhow, our family had traveled there often, and we became very close with many people, but especially these three young people that I'm about to tell you about. They spoke English, so it made it much easier to get to know them and get close to them. They were in their early 20s, and their names were Caroline, Pascal, and Johnson. Now, one Sunday morning, I was walking with them to the local church. Although it was a beautiful sunny day, the unpaved road was full of potholes and mud due to recent heavy rains. I was dressed up for church, but had sneakers on because I knew there was no way I could navigate the mud in any kind of dress shoe. My young companions, however, were dressed to the nines, as people in Haiti often do, whether they're going to church or to the doctor. They absolutely dressed to the nines. Pascal and Johnson wore suits, and Caroline, in her dress, even had high heels on. But because they were used to the roads, they had no trouble avoiding the mud. They nimbly walked around the puddles as if they were nothing. Despite wearing my sneakers, though, I managed to slip right into a pothole and got mud up to my ankles. Now, how was I going to go to church looking like that? I will never forget what happened next. First of all, my three companions laughed as if I had done the funniest thing in the world. Then, without saying a word, they took me by the arms and escorted me to the nearest house. The owner looked at my feet, and I was embarrassed. But without a beat, without even talking about it, she brought out a chair, and Johnson asked her for a bucket, which she immediately provided. Caroline took the bucket to fetch some water from an outside pump. While Johnson was getting me seated, Caroline hauled the bucket of water over to us. Pascal then bent down and took off my muddy shoes. Again, without saying a word, he washed my feet. I was dumbfounded. I kept saying, "No, Pascal, it's okay, I can do it." But he insisted. Then he washed my sneakers. He wouldn't let me touch them. Again, it was a Maundy Thursday moment, like I never had had and probably will never have again. Here, I thought I had come, that we had come to serve this community as good Christians, and it turned out that our friends were the servants at that time, washing my feet, just as Jesus washed his disciples' feet. And this story became a metaphor where I learned about mission partnerships and love in general. People who think that they are the only ones doing the serving soon are humbled. As we learn in any relationship, love must be a two-way street to be healthy. Love is sacrificial. Love involves humility and caring for others as a servant cares for his or her master. Love involves not only giving, but also being vulnerable so that we may receive love from others. And our love must not be limited to the so-called lovable, but to all of God's children. May you have a most blessed night as we recall and share love's God together.